Like I'm back with my first video in 2025, and it's going to be my latest record purchases video, but it's more like a Christmas or post-Christmas edition because some of these I didn't purchase myself, but they were given to me as Christmas gifts. Plus a book, because I see it here. The first thing is a book, and it wasn't a Christmas gift. I think I bought it myself. I think I pre-ordered it the day, it was announced that you could pre-order it like half a year ago, and in December, I don't know exactly when, in December, a couple of weeks ago, it arrived at my footsteps. It's the volume 2 of the McCartney Legacy book series by Alan Cosin and Adrian Sinclair. I said it when I reviewed the first volume, that I was a bit skeptical about this book, and it's really affordable. It's for such a big book, you don't do anything wrong, with purchasing it, because it's like 20 euro or something for such a big book. Also the first volume, so I bought the first volume, although I was skeptical about it. I didn't really, for some reason I thought it can't be a good book, but I was blown away by it. It's definitely the definite McCartney post-Beatles biography. Beatles biography about McCartney would be many years from now, the big one, but this focuses on the time after the split of the Beatles, and I really loved the Volume 1, so I immediately ordered, when it was possible, the Volume 2, and like I said, it arrived like 3-4 weeks ago, and now I'm at page, I can see it here because of that, I'm at page 65, so it's like a tenth of the book, which has like 700 pages, and it's really interesting. Of course, it picks up where the first one left, which was the dawn of 1974. The last one ended with Band on the Run being released in late 73, and this one starts in 1974, when things for me really get interesting, because first of all, I'm a big Venus and Mars fan, also London Town, which is almost the exact opposite in terms of an album's image. London Town and London Calling are very polar opposite albums. London Town and Back to the Egg. Some of my favorite McCartney solo or Wings albums were released during this time span, 1974 to 1980. Plus, and this was on the first of those 60 pages I already read, the McGear album. It also talks a lot about the recording sessions for the excellent McGear album, the album which is a de facto Wings album, where Paul McCartney's brother Mike, sings, is the lead singer, but those songs were written by either Paul and Mike together or just by Paul, and recorded by what would become Wings Mark II. So I always loved that album, but there was never really much really deep information about it, because it's that kind of obscure, overlooked album, but it's a fantastic album. So now I had like 60 pages talking about that album, on the first 60 pages on this book. It was really interesting. And another thing, we will come to it later, there's a Bryan Ferry Roxy music connection, of course, with the McGear album, and one of my record purchases will return to this. But for the first time in this book, I read about why Paul chose the opening track of the McGear album, which is a cover of Roxy Music's Sea Breeze, and I never knew why Mike McGear covered this track, and I'm a big Roxy Music fan. Roxy Music, I once did a ranking of my all-time favorite artists of all time, and I think Roxy Music came out like number 8 or 7 of my all-time favorite artists of all time. So I'm not just a big Paul McCartney or Beatles fan, I'm also a big Roxy Music fan, but there was never any information why they decided to cover a kind of obscure Roxy Music track, not a big hit of Roxy Music. And finally this book tells the story, and it was really nice for me to find out that it was Paul who suggested that song, because I always thought maybe it was an idea by Mike, by Paul's brother, to record this song, because I've never ever came across any information about what McCartney thinks about Bryan Ferry or Roxy Music. So I was really delighted when I read for the first time, something new. This is really a book where hardcore fans like myself can find out new stuff about Paul McCartney. When I found out through this book that Paul McCartney, especially at that time, mid-70s, was a huge Roxy Music fan, and especially also Bryan Ferry fan, and was friendly with Bryan Ferry back then. I never came across this information, and it was really cool that my big hero Paul McCartney is also a fan of another hero of mine, which is Bryan Ferry and Roxy Music. So that's all I've read so far that I read about this book. So I'm just at page 65. So the Venus and Mars sessions, I think I'm at the start of the Venus and Mars sessions, or the Junior's Farm sessions at the moment. Speaking of Junior's Farm and the Venus and Mars sessions, a thing I got for Christmas from my girlfriend is finally I also got the one hand clapping Paul McCartney and Wings thing here, which came out I think half a year ago. I watched it in the cinema. It was shown in some cinemas around the world, I think in November, and I watched in Vienna, in my hometown. I watched it in the cinema, and I loved it. I loved the film in the cinema, although most of it I already knew from YouTube clips and so on. And I have to say I was familiar also after listening now to this album. I'm kind of familiar with like 75% of the content of this through songs that already were released on archive editions or on bootlegs. So not much new stuff for me, and so I have to say I was a bit underwhelmed when I listened to it. As a movie in the cinema, it really worked brilliantly for me. But knowing most of these songs, and especially it turns out knowing most of the great songs of this one-hand clapping special, I was a bit underwhelmed by it, I have to say. But it's still a nice addition to my McCartney collection, so to speak. So the next one is a bit or much more obscure than the previous two things. It's by a forgotten British indie band from the 80s, also early 90s, called The Times. This wasn't really a Christmas gift, it was a gift from a friend of mine who's also a big music fan and record collector, and he thought I would like this, and he gave it to me like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I think he would have given it to me also even if it wasn't Christmas time, so I'm not sure if it's really a Christmas gift, but it was a gift by a friend of mine, and that's very nice of him, of course. And yeah, I wasn't really familiar with the group The Times, which released on at least this album and some others on Creation Records, on Alan McGee's label, so it's a bit misleading. I think the front cover is really not how you should do a good front cover, because it says a Creation compilation and you don't really know by whom, a compilation of what. So you really have to read the fine print here to find out that it's a band called The Times, which is kind of a new ordery indie group of the 80s from England, and it's nice, but this is a compilation of the greatest tracks, I suppose. I don't think I need any more of them. I think I've got it now covered with this pretty nicely. It's okay, but it's not something I will listen to over and over again. Still nice. Another band that I don't really like to listen to over and over again have always been The Who. The Who are a band that I can see their importance, of course, and especially when I was a teenager. This is a typical band, especially if you're a male teenager, an adolescent. Everyone who's interested in guitar music goes through the Who phase, because it's really music when you're in this rebellious, aggressive, youthful mode, I think. So when I was like 16, 17, 18, I really listened a lot to The Who. But after that, I'm leaning more towards the Kinks. I think for most people, especially in America, it's like that The Who are like the number 3 band from Britain, you know, Beatles, Stones, and then The Who. To me, they're not even in my top 10 favorite British bands, I have to say, but I can see their importance, and this has kind of reinvigorated my respect and also my kind of love for them. I think I struggle with lots of their studio albums because it's too much. It's too samey. It's often it's one big theatrical rock song after the other, and there's not enough time. There's not enough space to breathe. Not enough ballads or whimsical kind of songs. You know, there are exceptions like the Who Sell Out album, for example. But most of the albums are really like, especially since the early 70s, so starting with Tommy in 1968, 1969, it's really this big arena stadium rock kind of thing. I like the more subtle stuff from the mid-60s more. But yeah, I like The Who, and this really made me like them again more than I had in previous years. This is the 4 CD compilation 30 Years of Maximum R&B, which was released in the mid-90s. It's a bit like a cross between the Blue and Red album of the Beatles and the anthology albums by the Beatles. So it's, on the one hand, the greatest hits, most well-known songs, but also like unreleased stuff, live stuff and outtakes. So it's a combination of a best-of and a rarities set, and was also released around the time when the Beatles released their anthology. And they did it really nicely. It covers their career really well, and yeah, especially its chronological order, especially CD1, which is like the years 64 to 68, which I think is their best phase in my opinion. I really love them in that phase. In that phase, I think they're one of my top 5 British bands of that time. And I said 1964 because it also covers songs from the band that was the pre-Who band, which was the High Numbers. I think the first Who single, I Can't Explain, was released in the last weeks of 1964 and became a hit in 1965. But disc 1 also features 4 or 5 tracks from 1964 when they were still the High Numbers, the mod R&B incarnation of The Who. And yeah, it's really nicely done. I bought it second hand, so this was no Christmas gift, I bought it myself. I bought it second hand, so it's a box set without the box, it's just the CDs. But therefore it was very cheap, so someone like me who's not the biggest Who fan, this was like irresistible to have have the Who for value. So it was like 20 euros for CDs with all the big hits and great rarities. You can't do anything wrong with that. Yeah, The Who. And the last thing is, that's what I said, that's the cryptic thing I said in the beginning of the video when I talked about the McCartney book and his McCartney's view of Roxy Music and Bryan Ferry, because another thing I got for Christmas is this Bryan Ferry retrospective, which was released like 3, 4, 5 months ago, but now I finally have it, and I haven't yet listened to it. I have to unbox it. Yeah, I will unbox it now, so that there's a bit of a action adventure element to this otherwise very boring video. Like I said, I'm a real big Roxy Music fan. I have everything they ever released, of course, but I don't have everything Bryan Ferry ever released. I have 2 or 3 albums, I think 2 from the 70s and 1 from the 80s. So I'm familiar with a couple of these tracks from the albums I already have, and some songs like Let's Stick Together, also big classics, hits everyone everyone knows. But there's still lots of stuff, especially later Bryan Ferry stuff, that I never heard. So it's a mix of familiar things for me and new stuff. And yeah, let's have a look. And if you're asking why I'm wearing this cap here, it's a new cap. It's also a Christmas gift. I'm wearing it because I once got a really nasty comment under one of my videos where I dared to make a video with unwashed hair, and I haven't washed my hair yet. So in order to get nasty comments about me wearing this silly yellow thing here, I prefer those comments to the comments about my unwashed hair. I guess. Yeah, this is the Bryan Ferry best of or selected recordings album compilation I have here. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, he's a attractive, very good looking man, of course, so this also looks fantastic. The record is a clear vinyl. I wasn't really aware of that, so it's a nice surprise. And let's have, again, very attractive man, of course, Bryan Ferry, with washed hair, of course. Is this? I guess this is also, yeah, this is also clear vinyl. So I'm looking forward to listening to the Bryan Ferry compilation here, and maybe I will do a review of it in one of my next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.